Thank you. I really am looking forward to talking with people about technology and well-being, because kind of like we were saying when we came in today, just a few moments ago, everything has a certain synergy now, and with intention, you can really design how you want to integrate technology into your life, into your education, into your work. So today I just wanted to introduce myself. That's my Twitter handle, MindWiseCK. There's also my website, so that people watching today have a chance to keep in touch with me. And I thought I would kick it off with a picture that's actually up in the mountains in Davos. And this was during the World Economic Forum a few years ago. I was skiing there. I love the outdoors. And I really had to stop and remind myself. I actually took a picture, which is kind of a paradox, but I wanted to drop in on the moment and really recognize how beautiful the trail is and how clear the air was filling my lungs. So sometimes I realize with technology, our body might show up in a certain place and our mind hasn't arrived there, or with anything in the world. So I just want to invite people, if you've been listening to some lectures and you've been really, kind of moving from point to point today, to try to ground yourself and just start with presence. Really, right now in this session together, we're present for a certain opportunity. And when I drop in on a moment and remind myself of that, that's a way of connecting technology and well-being for me, because I allow myself to show up in my fullest form. And then I can connect with my presence and why I'm there and what I want to take away from the moment. So this picture in Davos really captures for me what that intention was like when I said, wait, show up for your life right now. Really not only enjoy it, but be able to zero in and also get very macro and zero out on the world. So I work a lot with applied mindfulness, design thinking, and storytelling, working with technology. And I do a lot of different integrations. And recently I heard the first Swiss astronaut to go into space, Claude Nicollier. He was speaking at this anniversary of Yuri Gagarin that we had in Switzerland called Yuri's Night. And he was describing this sense of wonder that he felt. Claude Nicollier had all of this prowess. He had studied, he knew his engineering. And then when he went up into space, he just kind of dropped out of himself for a moment and felt this sense of awe and wonder. And for me, that's part of the spirit of human ingenuity, to be able to see the world as a connected kind of community, and also have an appreciation and a wonder for what's happening and what's possible in the moment. So the intention today in this talk together is to really talk about how we design, what we're thinking about when I talk about tech and well-being, what that actually means, and maybe some tools for how to apply it in your life at any stage. So, just posing that question maybe to hold for yourself. And I've used that question to guide my life in different ways, because I've been a programmer. I've been working a lot with technology and virtual reality and different applications. And I'm always using my curiosity to try to push the boundaries of what the technology actually means when we start to apply it to our life. So that's a little bit about my background. And I'm going to talk more about that today, and then have time to talk with each of you, answer some questions and get together at the end. For me, you can look at all of those descriptions, but it really, really boils down to connection. It really is all about connection when we talk about technology and well-being and how to bring them together. And for me, that connection means inside and also outside. So just pausing for a moment, maybe you want to ground and arrive, just questioning what you do to reconnect. So when you feel like the day is frantic and things are just rushing by and you're checking your feed and things are popping up on your phone, what do you do to actually come back to yourself and feel that sense of presence and grounding. Everyone might have a different method. Sometimes life looks like this. Whether we're socially distancing or not, it can still feel that energy of rushing, and that many of us feel like this. We're checking things. There are a lot of different ways that social technology has kind of merged with our human brain and our impulse, and some of it's wonderful and it leads to deeper connection and engagement, and some of it can be kind of overwhelming. And for me, I use my intention to guide how I approach technology because I love it. So I don't want to say, oh, we all need to go away to this beautiful savanna behind me and turn off everything. But really, how do we give ourselves a feeling of expansion, like you're swimming in a deep, wide lake as opposed to a tiny cup? So that's really what fuels me. This question about integration. And as we think about that, I just want to switch to VR for a moment, because virtual reality, a place that I work in, involves that deeper connection inside and out. So it's a way of kind of flipping the system, getting involved in something that's a deep level of technology application, but has that connection as one of the benefits of intentionally being involved in VR design. So VR I have a saying, VR is visceral. And when you say something is visceral, it means you don't feel it like, you might feel it a little bit cognitively, but you're really feeling it in your animal body. You encounter something and all of your senses kind of spark, and you just connect with it deeply. And there have been neuroscience studies that show people are in virtual reality landscapes and they just start to have less inhibition, less fear, more curiosity. A greater sense of belonging and an openness to discovering something new. So for me, I like to use that power to really look at how it can enhance our feelings of connection, our feelings of presence, and our feelings of mindfulness. So you might have heard mindfulness before. It's a little bit of a buzzword. So, it's a word that can stand for different types of practices. Mindfulness itself is a practice that goes back in history to Buddhist times. And now a lot of people are using it in a way that is secular. So it doesn't have to be attached to any kind of spiritual practice, but it does have those roots. So for me, mindfulness, when people ask me to describe it and describe my practices with it and how I use it with technology, I really say, well, it's 3-letter A's. So it's awareness of myself and my senses and physical surroundings, as well as emotional surroundings. It's also the 2nd letter A, advancing, which involves stretching and really questioning limiting beliefs and really seeing what my purpose is and how I want to reach my goals. And then with a clear mind and that level of clarity, the authenticity really comes out, where I'm not striving for perfection. I'm actually looking for how to be in each moment and capitalize on the opportunities that present themselves. So you can kind of see that mindfulness is a way to be that can let you be much more adaptive and agile in the way that you approach things. So again, with that level of awareness, we can drop in anywhere in the world and kind of look around and just feel like, okay, our senses, our synapses are firing. We're seeing things come in that inspire us. The advancement, we're stretching. I use the metaphor of a tree a lot, and the way its branches are always stretching up towards sunlight. And also the authenticity of recognizing that we're in a connected world. And I think about all these talks, these inspiring talks that are being given throughout the weekend, and how many people are connected in different parts of the globe, different industries. But you can see probably a through line where all of us are talking about ideas that have links. And when you open up to your authentic self, you're more easily able to recognize those connections and use them to kind of fuel something better that's collective and collaborative. So if you look at this background of technology, mindfulness, there's a great researcher at Harvard Medical School. She also does a lot of applied psychology, and her name is Ellen Langer. And Emily Dickinson has this quote, "I dwell in possibility." Ellen Langer also believes in the possibility of the brain to reform its kind of self-talk. So the way that you approach something like problem solving, Ellen Langer will say, well, how can you switch gears in your brain to turn it from can I do something to how can I do something? And that's actually a very mindful switch to make something about opportunity instead of a defeatist mindset saying, well, can I even do that? So for me, I really love looking at those learning strategies and applying them to different experience design. How can I invite people, say from a team, to get into a room and approach a problem from a how can I standpoint instead of a can I? So I've been hosting a lot of different group activities, retreats, workshops, and having them inside of virtual reality so that people can be together in spatialized form. They have 3D animations and these types of immersive worlds. They have virtual reality applications. There's some AR applications, but it really lets people both get very deep about the projects and also have a feeling of play, which enlivens the senses. So here was an example where I brought people to this kind of Greco-Roman arch, and we were doing different collaboration exercises together all around the world. And this is an example of an interactive workshop I held on storytelling that also involved a little bit of body movement and yoga. So everybody had their separate spaces when they could come into this social virtual reality environment and have a catered experience where I designed the world and the environment and the music. So you can kind of see that with technology and well-being, it's all about transforming a space into something that's really conducive for the mind to feel like it's in a state of flow. So if you've ever felt yourself in the zone, it could be playing sports, it could be that you're doing something in creative writing and you're just off and going. I love to mentor those experiences and just make it possible for people to feel that. This was a talk that I gave, and it was inside of virtual reality. And I thought, well, rather than use slides, I will just use three-dimensional images and objects to show what I mean. So when I was doing a breathing exercise, I had the diamond gem in front of me, and I was leading with that gemstone getting larger when you breathe in and expansive, and then it would get smaller when you exhale. And I was just talking with people about some mindfulness ways to show up in the environment. And then with awareness, I started to flood the room with water, just slowly, and see if the audience was aware enough as I was talking that, oh, the water, it's up to my kneecap, and oh, what's going to happen here? So it was interesting to take people into environments and show them what you're talking about. And they say for memory, if you can connect your memory to an idea, an image, a story, it's much more salient. It's much more sticky. It's stickier. You get to remember it better when you have something like that to feel. And this was a winter solstice event involving poetry where we went to a space that looks a little bit like Switzerland or maybe farther north. It has the Aurora Borealis in the background and a lot of people just kind of playing in that space and exploring. And there's a snow leopard right next to me. So I open up in this talk just a spirit of possibility with you, mentioning some of the things that have happened already that I've been involved in with tech and well-being, and kind of opening up to the possibilities for what might come in the future. I've captured a lot of the stories and practices in the books that I've written. So Mindful by Design has exercises that have mindfulness and storytelling and design applied to different landscapes. And then recently, last year, I published Designing Wonder, which is about virtual reality, but there are a lot of exercises that surround the technology landscape and look at the brain and look at what I was talking about with wonder and a feeling of flow. Because a lot of times when we use technology, the whole experience starts before we actually start interacting and spills out into maybe after we take off a headset or we go away from a program. So I like to talk about the philosophy, the background, and then give a lot of practical applications. So today, as we step back and just kind of encounter what's happening in the world, there are applications for this type of combination in spaces like digital therapeutics, in all kinds of healthcare, in education, in leadership, in business. You can apply technology and well-being to almost any type of industry and see a benefit. And again, that symbolism of the tree, it really involves starting out with yourself and your physical body, feeling a sense of grounding, and then really getting curious and exploring and using technology in a way that amplifies the human capacity to be creative, to be imaginative. So this is a picture I took at the Berlin Wall, and I just love the idea of how can we be even more human in a technological landscape. So for me, curiosity sets the course. These are all pictures that I've taken on my journeys, and I'm really happy to be here today and talk about thriving with you, Marcelo, with your community out there, with Luca and her friends. I just feel so connected to this mission that involves all of us worldwide. So I do hope you keep in touch with me. That's my Twitter handle, as I said, and there's my website, CaitlinKrause.com. I put up resources on that website, so some of the research, some of my posts, and I also keep engaged with the community, so there you can actually join and talk with different people and interact with people who like to explore these worlds and the ways that they converge. So thank you very much.
It's really cool and very, very unique as well. It's the angle you have of meddling, kind of doing the mix of tech and well-being, which is so relevant, but it tends to be described in very alarmist tones. Let's impose restrictions, and restrictions sometimes are warranted. Sometimes they just need to enhance your awareness of the choices that you're making. Right? Someone who is very keen on running marathons could be told that, oh, this is going to be damaging your joints. Like, well, if you know it's going to be damaging your joints and you still want to do that, this is a conscious choice. And I think that especially when it comes to teenagers, they need to understand how to self-regulate, the certain choices that the customer, they need to understand the price that has to pay, rather than mom or dad saying, this is your time allowance for the day, and that's it. I mean, they shouldn't even have to intervene, right? Ideally, you want to be in a position where the teenagers themselves are the ones making that decision because they have high quality information that they trust. But
Well,
this is
yeah, when it comes to decision making, it's so fascinating to see when you open up the possibility that you have a certain amount of choice in the matter. And it's back to Ellen Langer, what you're doing, you're either doing mindfully or mindlessly, then that deliberate choice, it turns this idea of regulation into more creative freedom. And also you have to think, well, what's the end result? Like, you make a choice, what kind of path are you pursuing? So I think it more deeply connects you with your purpose when you think about that, and take away all of the implied barriers that we sometimes feel, like certain things are expected, or I'm just going through the motions of life. Yeah, it's really fascinating. There's a quote by, I think, Nietzsche that says, you can do what you want, but you can't want what you want. So a lot of my work is about intention and really connecting with people, saying, well, what do you want? Like, what do you really want to do? You want to write a book? Okay, then it's about how are you going to do that, and not am I a writer? So it's a different way of approaching the mind.
Yeah, and the element of choice is important for everybody. If you, I mean, there are lots of psychological experiments in terms of would you like to be the fastest person or the strongest person if you had to choose between one or the other? But the point is, I really don't care if I'm fast enough and strong enough, but thank you very much for giving me the choice. Right. The point being, if I'm told that you must be the fastest and the strongest person on earth, but it comes with a series of responsibilities and consequences because, hey, you're Superman. And Superman, no, the job description includes not really having a personal life, and you have to wear funny glasses when you're going to the Daily Planet. And the whole thing with the Lois Lane needs to stay a secret. So this is basically the golden cage scenario where sometimes people with very privileged backgrounds, they're desperately unhappy because they don't have a choice, right? So you have no royalties. I mean, typically someone who is predestined to become a king, the UK context is just the better known one, but you have the same thing in many other countries or dynastic families where you really want to be an artist and a poet, but sorry, you're the firstborn son, you're going to be king. And that's basically the lack of optionality is what leads into the unhappiness. So I guess it's making sure that the teenagers understand that life really has so many more options that they can see, that the universe of possibilities of what can unfold is not only infinite effectively, but also very unpredictable. So training for unpredictability is more relevant than becoming a good dentist. As in, great if you love dentistry and you want to have a stable income and ability of working in any country in the world, but it's far better for you to be able to decide later if this is something for you or if you want to work at something that is related. Like you want to sell equipment to dentists, which means that you need to understand dentists really well, but you really don't want to do the drilling day in, day out. You're a salesperson, right? You like to develop new possibilities. And we had the first session this morning was in fact a space architect. Right, so she is working both with space technologies and architecture, meaning she studies how to build houses on the moon. And how can you have a robot doing that? Because it's not like you're going to be shipping people in a truck to do it. Which materials are used? Oh, moon dust. You only have moon dust. There's nothing else you can use. Maybe you can make some water from the very thin atmosphere. And you end up in the kind of situation where uh, the fact that you're not an engineer, you don't have a gift for maths or physics is irrelevant. Okay, she's an architect, so clearly she has mathematical abilities, but she could be a lawyer interested in space law, right? So the combination of different realms of human knowledge, such as tech and well-being being the topic you covered today, make a life really interesting, because all of a sudden you can pick and choose 2 or 3 different topics and try to figure out relatively narrow niches where you can really be the best one in the world at doing that. And you have the optionality of saying, I want to be more of a space dude than a lawyer dude. But if I'm a space lawyer, I actually know enough to be able to shift later in one direction or another. And when you have teenagers trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up, they tend to be very limited to, my dad is a dentist, my mother is an engineer, and yeah, this is easier, right? So I already have the books at home, and that's what I talk about every day. But this is reducing your optionality. But when you're doing programs like Wisdom Accelerator, what they're trying to show is, look, you could be a space architect. In fact, if you want to send a message to a space architect, here's her LinkedIn address, and you can just try to engage to understand if this is something for you. So
Yep.
the whole point is inviting people from as many backgrounds as possible to allow them to have this peace of mind, as in there are lots of options. there are easier options, the ones that are closer to my heart, but the fact that you know that there's something else out there is very reassuring, and hopefully would reduce anxiety. Um,
I think
and
this is so tied to mindfulness, Marcelo, because even the second A, advancing, is about reshaping your stories, like the stories you carry about yourself, maybe the possibilities you expect for the future. And it's a paradox of a practice, I think, that people are learning and relearning about how to encounter themselves, how to leave some space for the voice that wants to speak, that's inside, that says, I'm so passionate and curious about something. And maybe there's not even a label for it. Maybe it's just a quality right now where some students are thinking, I want to study something that brings about that feeling in me. And like you said, they have to go out, they have to interview people who work in those fields. And maybe those fields like bioengineering, we know they're going to adapt. Everything's going to shift in terms of the labels and what it is and how the technology evolves. Um, but the actual ability for, as humans, us to be in touch with ourselves and be able to feel that sense of grounding, that's going to be universal life skill. So for me, I see that coming up a lot, even with some of the Stanford students I work with and teach and mentor, that they'll say, oh, we need these type of skills now, even as we're in our academic rigor, to couple that with well-being practice just makes everything more animated and also more authentic. What they're studying feels like it matters then.
yeah, the element is that if you join Stanford, you probably happen to be valedictorian here, first in class there. You've always been a bit of an overachiever, whatever you've done, and all of a sudden, you kind of get to a very exclusive group of people who are all smart, and then you go like, oh, I'm not even in the top half of my class, and that probably generates huge amounts of anxiety. So the perspective that I'd rather have the smallest house in the best neighborhood than the biggest house in the worst neighborhood is the mindset of, it doesn't matter I'm at the bottom half in Stanford, it's Stanford, right? And I use this kind of mindset quite often. Like when I was climbing Mont Blanc after this really long fast, I think I told you about that. The perspective was, I am giving myself a very challenging task. If I only make it to half the way up the mountain, it is a major achievement, right? No, I am in the category of those who tried. If I manage to make it to the summit as I did, it's like wonderful. So the fact that I considered going down that track allowed me to get to the summit, because the worst thing that you can do is to not start, right? And giving Stanford students in this specific case, but is also valid for basically every single human being, and I guess dogs and cats as well, is that allowing them to understand why they're doing certain things and how they integrate the results of what life throws back at them is what's likely to allow them to keep on facing adversity. But you just put a big bright label on top of it saying challenge. It's not
Yeah.
stress if you call it a challenge, right? So it's this kind of mindset that is extremely useful, and I'm very happy that you're teaching people to do that. But can you tell us a bit more about your classes in Stanford? I mean, how do they work, and how are they structured? Who's attending?
Well, right now we're all meeting remotely because of this sheltering in place and some of the global things that are happening. So within the, actually involved in cross-listed courses that have within them different computer science components. So it would be a CS course kind of combined with the well-being and wellness community. So I integrate the two and also plan to connect with the AI groups there too, because there's so many applied researchers. So my course right now is an elective, but Stanford is looking to really ramp up these ideas that kind of have synergies underneath them. Um, and what we've done, I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if You've seen the documentary The Social Dilemma that came out in the fall. Tristan Harris he's a Stanford graduate, and part of the discussions that we have, say in my course, are with students actually doing their own life design projects that have to do with concepts, everything from social media use, and we talk about our relationship with, say, avatars and different social technologies, and how students are using them in social networks. We talk a little bit about behavior change and mindset, and then also get into what I was showing with the group here, some of my work with virtual reality, and letting people be story creators and story builders in those worlds, and then designing them for certain applications, whether it's a specific well-being application or whether it's something that is community based with a different type of outcome in mind. It's a really open course that has a lot of, I mentioned portfolios, but a lot of student voice and conversations together. So yeah, and I'll just quickly mention over the winter, here it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, the holiday break, some of the students couldn't go home because of the global pandemic.
Right.
So we also had another faculty member and we just decided to have a campus retreat that was all hosted online, but using different interactive platforms so that people who were, say, in their dorm rooms and couldn't get to family, we all felt like we formed a social family. So I think to your point about being adaptive and kind of showing up to what presents itself, uh, I've been really, um, I guess in this past year, challenge would be a great label. There are challenges that have come up, and I keep thinking, well, what resources do I have, and what am I curious about learning? And I feel like the past year has been really amazing, the way that I've seen worlds come together in that whole sphere. And I'm talking about Stanford and Virtual World Society, the community that I'm a part of building, and my MindWise company. There's so many different communities that can connect in amazing ways. And I guess that's a testament to us finding each other too here. You kind of dream something, and if you dream it, you can build it these days, I think.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the way that you ended up getting invited to speak here, because I was responding to someone else's message and LinkedIn told me maybe you want to check out this person as well. I was like, oh yeah, no, I can invite her as well, because I have so many people that I could invite. I'm just making sure that it's geographically balanced, it's gender balanced, and you have all sorts of topics being covered. But the fact that the universe is pretty much saying hello, nope, hint hint, for me is part of paying attention. It's like, yeah, no, she checks all the boxes. I mean, the things that she could talk about, the Davos connection, and here you are, right? So it's awesome that yeah, we managed to make it happen. It would be really cool to have some sort of a workshop. I mean, the
Yeah,
VR
be great.
element for teenagers, right? Not only to mention Minecraft and all the other things that no,
Mm.
you literally have um, basically books being written about how to customize universes, how to mod Minecraft. And I think that we could do something with teenagers that would be very powerful, because what happens there is that teenagers tend to be especially insecure from a physical standpoint. Like they're the younglings of the tribe, so they don't have this physical power and presence yet. Some of them, I guess, do, especially the ones who are linebackers in American football. But the vast majority feels insecure in the presence of others. And if you put them in a VR context, which is why Minecraft is so popular, I guess, you will allow them to relax, right? They can finally say, yeah, it doesn't matter that I'm scratching my nose. No one can see that. They only see the things that I want them to see. So you're empowering the ability to present themselves as their ideal selves, so that they understand what is this ideal self that I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
by reducing the the noise, such as being in a room with a person, and should I cross my legs this way, and am I dressing, adequately for the occasion, and just throwing them in this VR universe, you're allowing them to focus on fewer frequencies. So
Hmm.
I guess that's so one of the things when you're fasting is that you just pay more attention with your senses, because your body is not so busy doing what you do when you're having a normal kind of digestion process and everything else. Like, oh no, I can feel things better, everything tastes differently. And the VR, and I'm not a huge fan of VR, at least I wasn't 20 years ago when the whole thing kind of started. Now more and more I think that, yeah, this is really, really powerful. It's trying to get the right kind of conversations going, and the fact that you're already doing that successfully is obviously a great bonus when it comes to making sure that it has positive outcomes. But it would be really cool to organize maybe some workshop, and you tell me, if you like to do that, when it would be convenient, if there's a format you'd like to experiment with, and we can invite teenagers from all around the world and say, hey, there's this workshop and it's all VR. This is the equipment you need. I mean, you don't need expensive Oculus stuff, right? And what exactly do you need for them to participate?
It's a great question. Basically, form fits function. So I have some environments I create that are in spaces like Mozilla Hubs, where you can join from a 2D desktop. So there's a low barrier to entry, and then if you have a basic level HMD, so a head mounted device where you can put it on and it's a headset, that's great because it means that everything will be animated around you. But we could build, I mean, for this type of experience that you're talking about, it could be a hybrid model where there are certain parts that are 2D, and then I take people into, let's say you had something like an Oculus Quest. Right now, those are fairly inexpensive. Sometimes there are ways to, um, have more accessibility with those, and that would be probably the easiest way for people to afford something that's a headset.
What about those Google Cardboard sets? Can you do something worth doing with those? Because then you can just post them to participants.
Yeah, you can do that. Basically, if you can imagine the cardboard, the way it works is just that it needs to have your phone
Yeah,
ins-
exactly.
inserted into it. So then what you're creating is not the best experience because it's all coming through your phone, but it still gives you a feeling of being surrounded. It just means that then when you plan the experience, you have to make the experience all web-based. So it's running off your phone as opposed to in the headset. All of the technology is kind of built into the headset, so it's much richer, a little more expansive. But when you talk about, like, certainly I could describe that like sort of the staging of which would be easiest, and the Google Cardboard. Google is actually moving away from VR in general, but they did just open source Tilt Brush, which was great for people in the community who want to, still use some of those tilt brush designs to create artwork around you. So anyway, long story short, cardboard is there, but all of the headsets of the past, like Daydream and all of those other things that Google was putting out, are slowly being ramped down. And other companies are really ramping up their products and their offerings for VR. So you're probably seeing HP, HTC, which made the Vive. So again, some of this, it's beautiful. We can talk the tech, because the tech and the tools then enable these types of experiences to really loft. And we seem to be in this watershed year where more people are looking at VR beyond gaming. Like, it's a great gaming device, but what can you do that might involve some of the game theory, but then apply it to different collaborations, problem solving, like you were mentioning Minecraft, that's like world building. So if you could combine world building with a lot of enhanced story mechanics, which is what I like to do, then it just takes off exponentially. And I'll briefly mention, I just built with a really amazing partner in the design. We built an experience that's modeled after Frankenstein. So you enter in an immersive world, and there are also components that are in Mozilla, so you could access from your computer, like 2D. And you play the role of Mary Shelley, or you could drop into other characters, and you're in Switzerland on one of the stormy nights in the Via Diodati, and you're given this challenge by Lord Byron to create a ghost story. So part of this immersive VR experience is about some of the science of the time period, questions about humanity and what makes a human. You have some AI applications now, and the whole Frankenstein experience is about creation. So in this experience, the user gets to create a tale as part of going back in time. And I mention that because there's just all kinds of magic that's inside of VR that you can pull out and lift up those elements of choice. I think earlier we were talking about choice and impact, and when you're in there, um, you feel transported. Like, who am I? What am I doing here? And um, how can my brain actually enjoy this experience to problem solve, but also to just feel the poetry of Lord Byron and look around and just feel my senses. Both of us have gone in many times into Frankenstein experiences just to have a good time in there as we're creating it.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that uh, experience Mary Shelley and the Lord Byron was during a pandemic, right? That's why they were stuck. I can't quite recall if that was the case. A few other novels were written during pandemics, and I believe that that was the case here.
The year
And
before, there was also a volcano that had erupted, and all of the ash had created a cloud over Switzerland. So there was also really bad weather, and people were stuck inside a lot.
right, so
So, so
it's
like, what do you?
similar to what is going on now in many
Yeah,
ways, right? The
yeah. It's an antidote to boredom. You're not bored. You're never bored. You could just make a really awesome sci-fi story.
Yeah, and the thing here is that you could also say that life is a game. It's just the most complex game you'll ever play because there's so much texture and so much potential possibilities. And the one of the reasons why I'm kind of leaning towards a cardboard sort of solution is that we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. So we should be able to get teenagers in Rwanda, Bolivia, and Malaysia to participate as well. And if you say, oh, you have to get a VR set, it's like, forget it. Like, you just lost 99.9% of the people who really, really, really could benefit from this kind of experience
Yep.
because they never played a video game with a VR set, and they're going to be absolutely fascinated by the possibility. And the fact that it's coming from the mobile screen, yeah, but at least you're cutting off a stimuli, from outside, which is
Mhm.
are important. So you're focusing on that experience, even though it's not the best technological possibility at the moment. And I think that is going to change lives, right? So you're just going to get them to think differently about the challenges that I have. They can transport themselves into, yeah, if I shut down all the noise and I focus on the one thing that I care about, what does it feel like? And hopefully they can, move into this parallel universe when they're getting bad grades or being bullied at school, and they just go like, okay, I don't like your frequency. No, personality is very much the way you react to the things that happen to you rather than who you are. Is in and the
Mhm.
ability to choose your reactions, it's one of the signs of maturity. And as we're talking about teenagers here, the sooner they can learn those things, the happier they are likely to be. Because it took me a very long time to learn some of the tricks of the trade, and I haven't learned that many out of the full tool set. So we just want to make sure that at least they know that there is that possibility, right? And this in itself should give them greater hope.
Well, that speaks to me, and there is a way. Design form fits function, and you need to meet people where they're at, and then be able to enable that type of amazing experience. So yeah, there are ways, and we can talk about that with a low barrier to entry, so there's more accessibility. Hmm.
Yeah, and it would be really cool if you could send us some more details on all the Stanford materials. I'm quite sure that they published some things, maybe via EDX. Maybe, I know that Stanford has lots of programs for high school students. I found that website. I mean, if you don't have it, I can send it to you. And I just want to create with Wisdom Accelerator a hub for optionality, right? So people, maybe the parents, maybe friends, maybe hopefully the teenagers themselves, they go like, I feel a little bit lost. If I go there, I'm going to find something super awesome that is going to give me a direction, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be following that path forever. It just means that you keep on moving, right? So you keep on learning, and hopefully that's going to lead them into a happier, more fulfilling lives. So that's I would say is the main reason why you're doing what we're doing here.
That's an amazing, yes, that connects to my mission. Like my mission is empowering humanity through connection. So all of that connection is ripe, and I feel like the world needs that. So let's build it. Let's talk more about the how. And just thank you for this time together today. And welcome to Cecilia. So we're also connected. So I'm happy to see more presentations today and just feel that connection around the world with what you've created. Thanks very much, Marcelo, and community out there.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining, and just stay in touch, and maybe you can suggest some mentorship opportunities and
Yeah.
a few other things that I have in mind, which we'll follow up after this one. So thanks again for sharing the wisdom with us.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.